Do you ever feel like people are listening to you? Like the great Google gods, the great Apple deities are listening to your everything. Like you've searched for something, right? Or you've been talking about something and then you get on Facebook and all the ads are related to that, right? So I was doing this series, we're doing this series on slowing down, and we're talking about Sabbath and stuff. And I got home last week after church and was checking my email, and I get a bunch of emails recommending books. I don't know how I got on this email list, but it just recommends all these different books. I get sci-fi recommendations. I don't read sci-fi. I get, nonfiction. I get all kinds of recommendations. And the first book that popped up on the email that I checked when I got home last week was this one right here. The Brain at Rest, How the Art and Science of Doing Nothing Can Improve Your Life. Now, the truth is, we either live in the Matrix or if somebody's listening to my sermons online, which is kind of cool. But what I find interesting, though, about this book, I haven't read it. It seems fascinating to me. I don't know if I will read it. But the whole idea that science is now supporting something that God instituted thousands of years ago. Like if you remember, God instituted when he created us as human beings. He created us to live in a pattern of work and rest. We're not supposed to work all the time. God created the earth in 6 days and then he rested for a day, right? That all of us, we need time to, I like the phrase of the book, to do nothing. We need some intentional doing nothing in our week so that God can do something in us, so that God can do a healing work that he needs to do in us that he can't do on another day of the week, so that God can do a transforming work in us that he's not going to do if we don't set aside some intentional time to rest that is separate from our work. And like we said, the name that the Bible uses for that God uses for that, is the name Sabbath. Sabbath. And we've said that the name Sabbath literally means to stop or to cease. To stop or to cease. And we learn that we're supposed to stop and to cease in the fourth commandment. We've looked at this each week. I want to look back at it again. In the fourth commandment, it says this: remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. We'll come back to that in a minute. But the seventh day is the Sabbath day of rest. We'll come back to that next week. Dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, and your daughters, to which all the kids go, amen, praise the Lord. Your sons and your daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, or any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. See, in this fourth commandment, it says that we are to stop, we are to cease our ordinary work, and we are to rest. But I love how it says we're not just supposed to do this as individuals, but those of us who have responsibility for other people, we are supposed to create an environment that makes it possible for them to stop and rest as well. And when we do this, we're actually imitating God, who worked for 6 days and then rested for a day. So our goal in this series is to figure out how to live within a healthy rhythm of work and rest. How to do that. How to figure out how to work 6 days and then rest for a full 24-hour period. But the truth is, the whole idea of ordinary work that it talks about here when it says you are to stop from your ordinary work, if you're like me, you're left wondering, what in the world, what exactly, God, does that mean? Because that's a little ambiguous, right? And the whole idea of rest, that's not all that qualified, right? Like we don't know exactly what God's talking about there, because what is work for you might be rest for me, and what is rest for me might be work for you. So what we're trying to do through this series is help each one of us put together a personalized and family-oriented plan so that we can practice this rhythm of work and rest, so that we can practice the Sabbath. Because I can't dictate to you how you should practice your Sabbath, because I am not you. You've got to come up with a personalized plan, which means you're going to have some work to do as we work through this series. So if you don't want to do the work, you don't want to do the homework, you just might as well get up and leave now, because it's just going to be a waste of your time. But for those of you that do, I want us to talk about this whole idea of work, because like I said, what ordinary work is a bit ambiguous. That's why in Jesus' day, there were all these rules and regulations that the religious leaders had put together for people to follow because they didn't want them to misuse the Sabbath. And so they took advantage of the Sabbath and really abused this gift that God has given us. That's why Jesus showed up and he redefined the Sabbath. He clarified what the Sabbath was really about. We looked at a couple of these verses last week. I want to repeat them because they're so good. It says, "Then Jesus said to them, 'The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath.'" What Jesus is saying here is that the Sabbath is a day to meet your needs and my needs. And not only is it a day to meet your needs and my needs, it's a day that Jesus is in charge of, which means that he's the one who's responsible to interpret what we can and can't do on that day. And we need his help and we need his direction. He is the Lord of the Sabbath. But it is a day to meet the needs of people. Immediately following that, he performs this miracle where he heals somebody. But he asks this rhetorical question. He says this next. He says, then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" Now, Jesus wasn't actually looking for an answer to this question. He was asking this question to make a point. And the point is that the Sabbath is a day to do good, and the Sabbath is a day to save life. In other words, the Sabbath should be good for you, and it should be life-giving for you. And so we left last week kind of with some questions that we're going to use as we work through this series to kind of figure out how to put together a personalized plan for our Sabbath. And these questions are this: when we're thinking about what we are going to do, how we are going to incorporate this essential practice in our life, how we are going to incorporate this thing that God commanded in the fourth commandment, but also gives us as a gift to meet our needs, we need these questions. Is it good for myself and or others? Is it life-giving? And is this healing and restorative to my body and soul? We're going to start thinking about that today as we look at the first of the four countercultural practices that I think should shape our Sabbath. Those practices are stop, rest, delight, and worship. Today we're going to talk about stop because the Sabbath is primarily about stopping. It's first and foremost. I think the Sabbath is first and foremost a day of stopping. I don't know why there's a... Actually, I do know why it's on there. Sorry, I'm just misreading my notes. Apologize, got lost there for a minute. We're all back. Okay, so stop. I'm going to stop, collaborate, and listen. Or to stop in the name of love. So I just thought I'd throw those in there. Those have nothing to do with what we're talking about. But stopping is actually the literal translation of the Sabbath, like we've talked about. And biblically speaking, it talks about stopping for a full 24-hour period. Now, I know when we think about a day, we think about morning as the beginning of the day and evening as the end of the day. But in the Jewish culture, that's not how they viewed the 24-hour day period. Their day ended at sunset and then went all the way through sunset. So it started the evening before and went to the next day. For a Jewish person, it started on Friday evening whenever the sun went down, and it was over on Saturday evening whenever the sun went down again. So that was their 24-hour period. But for us, we need to think about the Sabbath as a full 24-hour period that we set aside, that, as the commandment says, that's holy, that's set apart, that's different from the other days, where we stop from work. But the question is, what kind of work do we stop from? Because it's ambiguous. But when you look at how the practice of Sabbath was worked out in the Old Testament, as well as what Jesus teaches about the Sabbath, I think you can define work with two different ways. Like this. One, work is the work you get paid to do, like your job, right? The other is the work that you don't get paid to do that drains you or sucks the life out of you. I mean, you know what I'm talking about there. We all have things that we have to do that when we're done doing them, we wish we didn't have to do them, but we're just glad they're done, right? You know, they just drain us. They suck the life out of us. I think that when the commandment says our ordinary work, it's talking about the work we get paid to do, and then those other things that drain us or suck the life out of us, because the Sabbath is supposed to be a day that's life-giving. As we're going to look at in 3 weeks, it's supposed to be a day of delight, and anything that sucks the life out of you is definitely not delight, right? And so we need to figure out what the things are in our lives that would be qualified as work. We all know the work we get paid to do. What about the things that you don't get paid to do that drain the life out of you? See, on Sabbath, we are to stop working at those things. Now, here's the deal. We could just stop the sermon right now, which some of you might be happy to do, because I think you're smart enough to figure out how to do this, right? You can think through the work that you get paid to do and those things that you don't get paid to do that drain you and suck the life out of you, right? You can figure out what those things are. But I have a little bit more time. And sometimes, if you're like me, I need some clarity about things. Like, I need some help thinking through this. So I want to give you kind of a few more details that might help you think through this stopping thing a little bit more. So the first thing, like we already said, is to stop work, right? We're just to stop the work, the regular, ordinary, paycheck-producing job that we do. We're push pause on it. We're to say, I'm not going to do that. But I think we don't only need to stop work. I think we need to stop thinking about work. I heard of a study this past week that just thinking about work releases the same chemicals that induce stress in our bodies as working. You know that's true, right? Some of you just thought of something that you have to do tomorrow at work, and you got a little stressed. See, just thinking about work is the same as being at work. It has the exact same effect on your brain and on your body as if you were in the office. That's why it's so important to figure out how to discipline your mind to stop thinking about work, to which if you're like my wife, you'd be like, how do I do that? You know? I mean, how do we stop thinking about work? It's just so difficult. Just a little thing that I've found helpful is if I think about something related to work, I write it down real fast, and then I put it aside, and I ask God to help me to come back to that later. I invite him into the process, but to not just stop working, but stop thinking about work. Because if you're thinking about work, well, you might as well just be working. But the point is, we need to figure out how to stop working and stop thinking about work for a 24-hour period. For me, I was thinking about how this works out. For me, not just stopping work, but stopping thinking about work means that I try not to be on my computer at all on my Sabbath. Now, my Sabbath is not Sunday because, this is work. My Sabbath is, I take a Sabbath on Saturday, but I don't check emails on Saturday. I don't, like Liz and I were looking at stuff on my computer yesterday. I turned off my emails, so I don't actually get emails on my phone, which I know sounds heretical to some of you in the room. But I try not to think about work at all. I don't want to. I read all the time, but I don't read any books related to church or spirituality, even my own personal spirituality on Saturday. Why? Because I do that the rest of the week, right? That's what it is for me. I read that there are some people who this is such a burden to them related to work that they lock it away in a box for 24 hours. At the beginning of their Sabbath, they have a Sabbath box, and they just put their phone and they put their computer in there, and whatever it is that has the potential to distract them, they just put it away for 24 hours. Now, some of you are going through hyperventilation and stress, thinking about doing that, but you got to figure out, how do you stop work and how do you stop thinking about work? What could you do to stop work and to stop thinking about work? You got to come up with a plan for you. You got to figure out how to do that. Let me tell you something else. Not only do we need to stop work and stop thinking about work for 24-hour periods, but I think the Sabbath provides us a day to stop worrying. It's a day to release our worries and our anxieties to God, and to trust, and we're going to come back to this in a minute, to trust that he is in control and that he will take care of you. Wouldn't it be awesome to go a full 24 hours without worrying? See, Sabbath is an opportunity to say, I'm going to come back to that tomorrow. I'm going to think about that tomorrow. I'm going to be anxious about that tomorrow, because today I'm just going to trust God with it. It's a day to stop worrying. But not only is it a day to stop worrying, I think the Sabbath is a day to stop wanting. To stop wanting. If you're like me, wanting something that you don't have is not life-giving. It's draining, right? It sucks the life out of you. And when we stop wanting, we turn our hearts away from greed and discontentment and restlessness. And we all struggle with that at one degree or another, right? We are discontented with so many things. But when we stop wanting, we turn our heart away from that. And instead, we turn our hearts towards gratitude and contentment and restfulness. And for me, that means I try not to go shopping on the Sabbath. I don't like to go shopping on the Sabbath. Why? Because it burdens me with want. I want more. You go into the store, you find something that you didn't know you needed because it's there, right? I mean, if you've ever been to Costco, you don't need 800 pounds of that, but yes, you do once you get there, right? Yeah, it's like, but on the Sabbath, we create some space to stop wanting. See, we're getting ready to move Levi into college, and we have a long list of things that Levi wants for his dorm. And I thought yesterday, I could look up some of these things on Amazon, and I had to put the time out on and pause it and say, look, why don't we just move that till today? I'll look at that today. I don't want to want something on my Sabbath. It does take discipline. It takes effort. We'll come back to that in a minute too, but to stop wanting. Here's the final thing that we have the opportunity to do on the Sabbath, and that is to stop hurrying. I know that most of us wear busyness as a badge of honor, but when we stop on the Sabbath, it can help us, in the words of John Mark Comer, eliminate hurry from our life, to ruthlessly eliminate hurry. See, in stopping for one full day each week, we are reminded that intimacy with God is not something that can be rushed. Do you realize that? I love what I've read. I can't remember who said it, but they said God is never in a hurry. You know, we are, but God's not. See, on Sabbath, we allow ourselves to slow down for a little bit. We can't enjoy the presence of God if we're always looking at our watch and trying to make it through our to-do list. Or as Alan Fadley says, the Sabbath is God's antidote to our hurried, harried pace of life and gives us the unhurried 1-in-7 rhythm woven into the fabric of creation. I love that. Or as John Mark Comer says, Sabbath is like a secret weapon in the war on hurry. We can stop hurrying. We can just slow down for a little bit. We can take a deep breath. That's why on Sabbath we sometimes sleep a little bit later. Not a lot later, because like the older I get, the earlier I wake up. You know, it's very frustrating. I used to sleep till 9, and I'm getting up at 7:30. What's the matter with me? I'm trying to turn into Mark. But on Sabbath, we just allow ourselves to slow down a little. We create some space so we can slow down and stop hurrying. Now, so on Sabbath, these are all things that I would characterize as our ordinary work. We stop from our paid job, from our unpaid job. We stop thinking about work. We stop worrying. We stop wanting. We stop hurrying. The reason why we do that is so that we can instead do things that are good and that are healing and that are life-giving and that are restorative to our soul. And the reason why that happens is because on the Sabbath, we do something amazing. See, when I stop on the Sabbath, or when, I didn't know that was on there. Go to the next slide. When I stop on the Sabbath, I remind myself of who I am and who God is. Remember the verse I said at the welcome, Psalm 46:11, that says, to be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. See, what Sabbath provides for us is a full 24 hours to be still and to know that He is God and to remind yourself that you are not God. See, the Sabbath is a day to remind ourselves that we are not in control, that we are not in charge, and that we have limits. And instead, on Sabbath, we remind ourselves that God is God, that He is in control, that He is on His throne, that He can take care of the world and He can take care of my world like He doesn't actually need me. He can take care of things without me, right? And it really tells us that He can be trusted, which is really at the root of what Sabbath is all about. Sabbath is an invitation to trust. It's an invitation to trust. It's, I think, the biggest thing. It says this, that the core spiritual issue in stopping is trust. Will God take care of us and our concerns if we obey Him by stopping to keep the Sabbath? That's the question that all of us have. Is God going to take care of me? Is God going to meet my needs if I stop? It's an invitation to trust Him. It's an issue of trust. Do I trust God enough to obey His commands? Do I trust Him enough that He's going to provide for me. I love this verse out of Proverbs. We look at this all the time. It's probably my favorite verse in Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. This isn't a verse about Sabbath, but it is a verse about trust. And it says, when we trust in the Lord with all of our heart, he will take care of us. He will make our path straight. He will work things out for us. I think most of us struggle on the Sabbath because we struggle with trust. But we have a God who is trustworthy. Look at this next verse. I love this. This is God speaking. Those who honor me, I will honor. Like if you do what I tell you to do, I'm going to take care of you. If you obey me, I'm going to provide for you. If you just do what I'm asking you to do when it comes to the Sabbath, I can take care of your job and I can take care of your to-do list. That doesn't mean it's all going to get done. Because the truth is, most of the time, we don't stop on the Sabbath because we have more to do, right? We just have things that we have to do. But the Sabbath, I'm getting ahead of myself. But on the Sabbath, we don't finish our to-do lists so we can practice the Sabbath. We stop just so that we can trust in God. Sabbath is a day to tell God, I trust you. I trust you to meet my needs. I trust that you're going to provide. I trust that you're going to take care of me and my job and everything else that I have going on. So, I just want you to start thinking, how can you stop from your ordinary work for a full 24-hour period and trust God to take care of you? And I told Liz, I really struggled for some reason with this sermon today. I just felt like it didn't flow like I wanted it to. And so I have a couple of other things to share that I don't think fit in the flow, but I feel like I need to share. It's kind of like a postscript on a letter. You know what I mean? So I want to add this in there, even though it doesn't flow. So just a couple of things that I think have been helpful for me as I kind of work to put the practice of the Sabbath into practice. And the first one is this, that stopping work requires work. Stopping work requires work. That means that you have to prepare for the Sabbath. The Jews called the day before the Sabbath. You remember what the Jews called the day before the Sabbath? The day of preparation. It was the day. They knew that you had to prepare to Sabbath. It doesn't just happen, right? So stopping work requires work. And like I said, it doesn't mean that you are able to get everything done before you get to the Sabbath. You just get to the Sabbath and you stop. You do your best to prepare, and then you leave the rest of it up to God. See, the truth is we all have so much to do that we're never going to finish it all. Sometimes you just have to stop, but that doesn't mean you can't prepare. Do those things that drain you and that suck the life out of you another day during the week. Figure it out. You're smart people. Some of you. But stopping work requires work. I wish somebody would have told me that earlier. I find that so freeing. And then here's something else that's so true but so uncomfortable. That stopping means saying no to some good things. Stopping means saying no to some good things. See, there are some good things that are on your to-do list, but they are either work that you get paid to do, because some of you have jobs, like I feel like I have a job that doesn't drain the life out of me, that is life-giving a lot of times. So I need to stop from things that are good for me so I can have something that's better for me. There's this book by Ruth Haley Barton called Rhythm of Work and Rest, which is a great book that if you want to explore this in detail, you can. But she tells this story about when she and her husband were starting to figure out how to put this practice of Sabbath into practice in their own life. They were much older. They had teenage kids. And one of their teenage daughters wanted to play traveling soccer. And they realized that they could not rest and practice Sabbath and do traveling soccer with their daughter. Why? Because traveling soccer drained the life out of them, right? And so they had a real tough conversation with their daughter. They weren't going to force her into their plan for Sabbath, but what they said to her was, listen, you're welcome to do traveling soccer, but on the Sabbath, we will not be traveling with you to your soccer. On the Sabbath, you got to find another ride. And we will support you, but for them, they knew they needed to say no to something good so they could say yes to something better. I think as we put together a plan for a Sabbath, we're going to realize that we're going to need to say no to some good things so that we can practice the Sabbath and experience the best from God, the work that he wants to do in us, the transforming and healing and restorative work that he wants to do in us. We have to say no to some good things so that we can say yes to rest and to delight and to worship. So, in light of all that, I want to leave you with a question. And here's the question. What would it look like for you to stop? Here's the deal. I can't answer this question for you. You have to answer this question. And I will say this as well. If you don't want to answer this question, guess what? That's fine. You'll be just like most other Christians that live in the United States of America who don't practice the Sabbath ever. You'll be like me growing up who never ever heard a sermon on the Sabbath, and it wasn't even on my radar. I thought the Sabbath was a Jewish thing, but not a Christian thing, right? So if you want to do that, you just be like everybody, but you're going to miss out on something that God has for you. You're going to miss out on a gift. You're going to miss out on some space for God to do a healing and transformative work in your soul and in your body and your mind that you will not experience if you don't put this into practice. So the question is, what would it look like for you to stop? To stop from your ordinary work, to stop from thinking about work, to stop from worrying, to stop from wanting, to stop from hurrying. What would that look like in your life? Here's what I would encourage you to do over the next week. Spend some time just thinking through that question and writing down some things. Or talking about it with your spouse. By the way, just a reminder that if you're married or you're in a family, this is not an individual project. You have to do this in relationship with the people that you are with, you know? Talk about it with your spouse. Don't just say, hey, I'm going to go do my Sabbath, honey, you take care of the kids. You know, it's not going to work out well for you, and I don't think that's how God wants you to honor the Sabbath day. So have a conversation. What would it look like for us to stop? What would it look like for me to stop? Write it down and start putting together a plan that's life-giving, that's restorative to your soul. And I will say this, for some of you that are on schedules where you don't work the same time, the same days every week, this is complicated, okay? Actually, everything we talk about here, putting together this plan, it's hard, it's difficult, it's going to be complicated. It's going to require work to stop from work. But if you work like, differing schedules, 5 days one week, 3 days another week, you never have the same day off every week, you're just going to have to figure it out and be creative. Because guess what? I know you can. You can be creative. You've told lies before, so I know you can be creative. It's true. Come up with a plan that works for you. To set aside a full 24 hours and say, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop from my work. I'm going to stop from thinking about work. I'm going to stop worrying. I'm going to stop hurrying. I'm going to stop wanting. So what would it look like for you to stop? Why don't you close your eyes? I want to invite you to, in light of that question, to pray a prayer. And this is the prayer I want to invite you to pray. God, what would it look like for me to stop? Ask God, God, what would it look like for me to stop? Would you show me how I can stop from work, how I can stop thinking about work, how I can stop worrying, how I can stop wanting, and how I can stop hurrying. Just invite him in to help. Heavenly Father, like I've said throughout this series, I thank you so much for this gift of Sabbath that I think for most of us we have neglected, and as a result, we've missed out on something from you that you want to do in us and that you might want to do through us, and we don't want to miss out, God. Yes, we do want to be obedient to you. At the same time, we want to receive this amazing gift that you've given us. But we're going to need your help to figure out how we can stop. Help us to know how to stop our work. For some people, that's so easy. It's not difficult at all. Others, man, that's going to be a struggle, especially if they're attached to it with their phone that's with them all the time. Show them how to stop from work. Show people how to how to stop thinking about work. Show us, God, how to stop worrying and to stop wanting and to stop hurrying. Because, God, we desperately need you to do the transforming work in our lives that you want to do. We need you to change us. We need you to restore us. We need you to give us life. And so will you teach us how to do this? We look to you for help. And as I often pray, God, not only would you show us what to do, but would you give us the courage to do it? Give us the courage to do what you tell us to do. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.